Hello and welcome to MMA Crypt Fighting Talk. On today's show, we'll be going 2 rounds of action featuring Gilbert Melendez and Anthony Pettis, named as TUF 20 coaches, and Arianny Celeste trashes Ronda Rousey. Joining me to discuss these topics will be Mr. Greg Marshall.
Alright, buddy.
Okay, let's get started with round 1, Greg. And Gilbert Melendez and Anthony Pettis, named as TUF 20 coaches. The main story, the main background to this was Gilbert Melendez and his contract negotiations with the UFC. Apparently, all was agreed between Gilbert Melendez and Bellator last week. The UFC were trying to cut Gilbert Melendez's salary in the new contract negotiations. I can't find out how much Gilbert is being paid in his new contract. Show money and potential win bonus, of course. What he does get, though, is a title shot, a coaching gig on the Ultimate Fighter 20, 75% of his fights being pay-per-view fights, and regardless of his place on the card, a nice slice of the pay-per-view box office, so he doesn't even have to be main event or co-main event to get a slice of the revenue. Even if the card does do poorly, he still gets paid pretty well. So it looks to me, Greg, like Gilbert Melendez has gone off and had a little tantrum and stamped his feet and come back and got what he pretty much wants. Would you agree with that comment there, Greg?
Other than stamped his feet and got what he wants, I think basically he's played the market and got his value. Dana often said with the whole Eddie Alvarez thing that the free agency gives fighters the chance to earn what they deserve, and that Bellator were screwing them because they weren't allowing them to do that with all the silly clauses and that they were putting into their contract. This one has been pretty cut and dried. The UFC didn't want to offer Gilbert what he was looking for, so he went away. He got the offer from Bellator, came back, and the UFC have given him what he wanted. So he's played the market, and it's worked out for him, and fair play to him for that. It looks like he's done really well out of it. I don't think a lot of people would have thought he'd have got straight to title shot as a result of it, but he has. He's got a great pay-per-view deal from what you're saying. He doesn't have to pass a certain amount of buys or that to get for his pay to kick in on the pay-per-views like everyone else does. I think he's the first fighter ever to strike that deal. So it looks like he's done really well out of it, and fair play to him. It'll be interesting to see how other fighters deal with their contract situations now, though.
That is very true. Would you say that this shows just how worried and concerned the UFC really are about Bellator?
Not really. I think if they were really worried, I think they might have let him go and try and have them pay him too much money and bring them down like they did Affliction and other companies.
But that's the thing now, they've got Viacom behind them, so they could, it's not really going to take them out of business, essentially.
Well, yeah, yes and no. Yeah, they've got Viacom behind them who've got lots of money, but Bellator are already running events at a loss. Basically, they're not making as much money as they're paying out to the fighters. I think it was the event that Czech Congo was on lately. The fighter pay compared with the gate they got, and that was just crazy. And they're not going to keep putting on events where fighters are earning more than they're bringing in at the gate. That's just not good business, and Viacom will pull the plug if that carries on.
Well, this is the deal, Greg. You talk about money coming in. Obviously, you need to make money in any business, regardless of how much money you got behind you. Bellator are still looking for that first pay-per-view, and they've already talked about Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler Free. But there was talk when Bjorn was discussing Gilbert Melendez coming over to Bellator. He was discussing about putting Gilbert Melendez on the first pay-per-view card. So, do you think that's one of the reasons why, UFC have looked at it and thought, yeah, come on back to us, Gilbert, Because as soon as Bellator do that first pay-per-view, and if it grosses some numbers and, they make a decent profit off it, Bellator, they're on the up then, All the time they're on TV, not making any pay-per-view money, they're not advancing anywhere. They're not right on UFC's heels in a way, financially anyway, like making money. Do you think that's one of the reasons why the UFC sort of got Gilbert back as well?
I don't think it really would have factored into their reasoning, but it does kind of make sense because the pay-per-view that Bellator put on, if Melendez was part of that, it would have had a far better chance of being a success. No, that I think it'll probably will be a success this time round anyway, to be honest, just because Alvarez and Chandler's got so much more behind it now. So I think it'll be a success anyway, but to a certain extent, I don't think it'll rival a UFC pay-per-view, but I think it'll do well.
Do you think that this is starting to change the way of the mixed martial arts business now, Greg? Because obviously you mentioned about what will the other fighters, position themselves for in contract negotiations with the UFC now. Josh Thompson's already come out and said he's not happy about it. He said it makes him sick to his stomach. So guys are going to be lobbying for higher contracts now and threatening to go to Bellator. Do you think this one deal has changed the landscape of mixed martial arts for the time being?
Yeah, well, I think it's brought it back to where Strikeforce was a couple of years ago, when people had the free agent ability to go to them and get a good offer. For a long time there, for about 2 or 3 years there, you've had nobody able to do that. Bellator weren't really at the level of offering that kind of money, but now they're looking to step up a bit. They're slightly moving into the area where Strikeforce were a few years ago, and Pride and whatever before that. So now fighters are able to get the ability to test the market and see how much they're really worth. So in that respect, it is changing again, but it's just changing to what it was a few years ago. It might mean that we'll lose a few top guys from the UFC because Bellator will be willing to pay them more money. But on the whole, I think most people will still be in the UFC, because the UFC will pay, as we've seen with Gilbert, to keep the top guys.
Well, we're talking about the landscape changing and Bellator trying to get on par with the UFC and challenge the UFC. Now, the main key for me is building your own stars. And what the UFC have got right now, they've got like feeder companies. I don't know if they've got a behind the scenes contract agreement or a financial agreement, but UFC seem to be working deals with Invicta and Cage Warriors. Like, they're their feeder companies, what provide future talent for them. Now, Bellator don't seem to have this at the minute. Do you think it's important for Bellator to look up like a feeder type organisation as soon as possible so they can start sticking it out with the UFC? Because it's no good keep offering like 300,000 a fight to UFC fucking fighters. Do you know what I mean? Because sooner or later they're not going to, especially if they're not doing pay-per-views like we mentioned, they're not going to see nothing back in return. And like you mentioned, Viacom will pull the plug on Bellator. And when they do that, Bellator's stuck with shitloads of contracts that they can't afford. And ultimately, that'll be the closure of the company. So do you think a feeder company for Bellator is very important and crucial and something they should do as soon as possible?
To be honest, I wouldn't say they haven't got that already. I think they probably do have that to some extent. It's just not as publicly known as the UFC. You see all these Russian guys, for example, that are coming into Bellator.
Yeah.
They must have something there that's getting these guys in. So
M1, do you think?
Well, it could be that M1 or a management company, or like in the case of the Brits that are signing with the UFC, they're affiliated with the Wolfslayer gym just now, and they're getting all the Wolfslayer guys in. So maybe they're affiliated with gyms rather than companies, and they're bringing fighters in via the gyms.
Well, you mentioned Wolfslayer, they've got Team Cabon as well. So
yeah. So they're maybe not doing it in as public a way as the UFC are doing it, but I think they have got a feeder system of some sort going on, be it with a company or with a gym or a trainer or coach or whatever.
You mentioned that, Greg. There was some sort of deal between Bellator and the Wolfslayer where they sent a huge sum of money to the Wolfslayer. Do you know what that was for?
To guarantee their fighters go fight in Bellator.
I'm sure it was something to do with like it was something productions or something.
Yeah, there was production or something like that as well. I think I can't remember the whole ins and outs of it, but it was to, and obviously it will improve the level of the gym and whatever as well, which in turn will bring better quality fighters coming through the system and going to Bellator.
Well, I'll have to read into that a little bit more, Greg, and hopefully we can come back to that on a future show.
Like you say, the UFC seem to have some kind of good relationships with these companies. There's Titan. I read a bit today that their guy is saying that their contracts, they allow it in their contracts now to say basically that a fighter can leave for Zuffa at the drop of a hat. So they offer that to the fighter when they sign for them now.
Yeah, I believe it's the same thing with Cage Warriors too. Cage Warriors offer that sort of deal too to the fighters. I'm sure Cathal Pendra would come out and mention something along those lines.
Yeah, because I noticed he said he'd officially left them the other day.
Well, I mentioned Josh the Punk Thompson not taking the news too well. Do you think he has a fair gripe there, Greg? And do you think a lot of the other fighters will?
To be honest, I read the Josh Thompson piece completely different to everyone else. I took it a bit tongue in cheek. I didn't think he was coming across as being really upset or really disappointed. I think he came across as being more, well, there's my title shot being knocked back a slot. I didn't really take it as being all that bad. But it benefits him in the long run because now he knows he can earn so much more money. Because if you get to a level, you can earn a lot more money. So I think it benefits him in the long run.
He's been sulking and whining a little too much for me anyway, Greg. You know, it's like, grow the fuck up, Thompson. You know what I mean? You lost your fight. Yes, you had a fucking dislocated thumb. Yes, you did great. Yes, it was a close fight, but you still lost the decision. You know, come back and win a fight or two, and then there you go. Lobby for your own fucking contract. You know, it's like after his fight with Ben Sanderson, he's just done nothing but bitch and moan for me. He's actually started to turn me off him. You know, I was really impressed after his Nate Diaz victory. Fucking awesome victory that was. But since the Ben Sanderson fight, he's really been turning me off with his mouth.
I can see why. It does get to a point where you get a bit just concentrate on your own career and do your own thing and get a win. You know,
it's like you said, he's opened up doors now for the future guys. You know, and Bellator have opened up doors. It's a good thing, but make the most of it because like we mentioned, Bellator, if they want to start splashing this money around, well, they can afford it. They need to start getting pay-per-views going, and they ultimately need that first solid pay-per-view where they bring in the numbers, they bring in the money, what exceeds the payment of the fighters. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Now, there is one thing I've noticed about this announcement, Greg. Gilbert Melendez and Anthony Pettis, they both have Mexican heritage. They both got Mexican backgrounds and Mexican blood. We've all seen how it went down last time Gilbert faced a fellow Mexican in Diego Sanchez. We know that the UFC are trying to break into Mexico. Obviously, there's been talk of a Mexican Ultimate Fighter. I think there is one actually. Yeah, there is one. A Latino Ultimate Fighter. Yeah, so there is. Do you think this is the reason why the UFC might have booked this too? To appeal to the Mexican audience?
No, because if they did, then they would have been coaching the Latino version of TUF. I think it's just Gilbert's wanted the title shot as part of the contract that was on the table, and that's the reason the fight's been made. No other reason than that, and the fact that Gilbert's right up at the top anyway. I don't think it's anything to do with appealing to any audience or whatever.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what the former Invicta ladies make of this, Greg. I noticed a tweet from Beck Hyatt. She's pretty chuffed about it and pretty stoked. I'll have to check out the other ladies later on. But it's going to be interesting to see what they think. I'm sure they'll be pretty chuffed.
Well, I noticed a tweet from Jo Calderwood saying that she was pretty pleased about it as well.
I wonder who they would like to be coached by. I'm thinking Pettis.
I think a lot of them might be looking at Pettis just because he's a bit more kind of unorthodox striking, but I think Gilbert might be the one to be with to round off their skills better.
Okay, let's take things over to round 2, Greg. Apparently the UFC's leading ring girl, Arianny Celeste, had a few choice words concerning Ronda Rousey when speaking with MMA Junkie Radio. Arianny said, "I don't really like the way she carries herself. I don't think she's a good role model for women's MMA. I think that women should empower each other and give each other a little pat on the back." Not too harsh, but what do you make of the comments from Arianny Celeste?
Couldn't really care less what she's got to say. I don't see why women need to pat women on the back just because they're women. That makes no sense to me at all. And as for Ronda carrying herself in a negative way or a bad way or whatever, each to their own. Personally, I make no bones for it. I'm a Ronda Rousey fan, big time, and I have no problem with anything that she does, despite everything everybody commented on over the series of TUF that she was on.
Well, sorry, Greg.
I was just going to say I've got no problems at all with how she carries herself.
Well, speaking about patting people on the back, somebody needs to, have a friendly word with her and that Brittany Palmer, because look at their lips the other day, fucking Misfit posted up on the site about their lips, I said before we started this show I was going to mention this, they look like fucking Daffy Ducks, the pair of them. It's horrendous. You know what I mean? She needs to be concerned about herself and the way she's looking, because she wants to go on about, women sticking together, what? Sticking together and fucking, yeah, let's go and pump some shit into our bodies, you know what I mean? Make ourselves look fucking fucked up, because that's the way they're going to look.
Yeah, and it, as much as you like to criticise them for that, it's a shame that they feel the pressure they've got to do that they need to look like they feel they've got to look. I feel sorry for these women that the people put that much pressure on you to stay young looking, to do what they do, which is inevitable. They're all like, the job that these girls do, they're going to want young, good looking women, and if they get older, then they're not going to be needed anymore. So they're doing that because they're pressured into it to keep a position that they've got. Whether that's right or wrong is debatable either way, but it's hard to listen to something that she's got to say about another girl when she's clearly got a lot of low self-esteem herself to be doing stuff like that.
Well, it's just a start, Greg, because, you look at some of these women fighters too, they want to start going on about, they complain about Matt Brown, making, some snide comments about if I have to pay $35 to see women fight, then they better be in Nixon Brow or something. It was something along those lines,
Yeah.
Pretty sexist. But then you got like fucking Felice Herrig going out, have you seen her already? Like, she's fucking naked with the UFC gloves on, So you cannot complain with what he's saying, They want to start going about, but we need our sex appeal. Well, which one is it, You choose. It's ridiculous. As it goes for Arianny, I like that she's come out and had the freedom of speech, but what is her point? I just don't see a point. I just don't get what she's getting at, to be honest with you. Yeah, Ronda's fucking, she's mean mugging, she's fuck looking, but that's just her. I just don't get a point. What's all this patting on the back? I really don't get it. You mentioned what? Just you want Ronda to come and pat her on the back?
Yeah.
Well, she's got Bruce Buffer fucking holding her hand and patting her on the back at the weigh-ins. You know what I mean? There you go. Bruce will do it for you.
It's like she's just trying to keep herself in the news by making a comment on Ronda, because everybody likes to talk about Ronda.
Do you think that there'll be repercussions for Arianny?
Nah, I don't think there'll be any repercussions. She might be told privately to watch what she's saying in future, but I don't think there'll be anything done to Arianny over something like that.
Well, we know what Ronda's like when it comes to, people taking shots at her. And
oh, yeah.
It's going to be fucking fairly interesting to see the next weigh-ins with Ronda Rousey and Arianny. Do you think they would actually possibly not have Arianny there? Because they've got a few ring girls now. Do you think they might actually rotate her next time Rousey's fighting?
Nah, I don't think so. I think Arianny will still be there. If it's an event that she covers, it's an event she'll be there for. And as for Ronda will probably... Somebody in the media... I'll ask her a question about what she thinks of what Arianny says, and she'll probably come back with some fucking dirty, snidey comment herself.
Yeah, I'm thinking they'll probably have them in the room together, they'll discuss it out, and obviously, like you mentioned, the media are going to jump all over this, and they will ask Ronda Rousey for a reply, and I do believe, knowing Ronda Rousey, like you said, there will be a snide comment in return, and probably about her lips too.
Probably.
But as it goes, maybe fucking Edmund Tarverian will go up to her and like threaten her at the weigh-ins or something. You talk about Ronda like that, I smashed your face in. I'd wait for you.
Gotta be careful with him.
He's a fucking strange character, Greg. He really is strange. There's something not right about him. He's fucking wired wrong, that boy. He really is.
He breaks at the slightest thing, yeah. He just seems to lose it at the slightest of things.
Well, basically, Ronda has been going downhill since TUF 18. And I use downhill loosely here because, like, the fans liking you is one thing, but fans staying interested in you is another. Like, it doesn't matter if the fans like you. I believe in this sport now, we're starting to see it more and more each time, like with the cost checks and whatnot. There's room for the bad boys, like the Paul Daly's and whatnot. People are attracted to it.
Look at Michael Bisping. He's made a career out of it.
I think that during the filming of The Ultimate Fighter 18, Ronda actually orchestrated a heel turn in pro wrestling terms. Would you agree with that, Greg? Or do you think it just came about naturally, just, off the way Miesha Tate was and Ronda was?
I think it came about more naturally than orchestrating it, to be honest. Miesha was the one that kind of pushed it, I thought. But again, people who don't like Ronda see it the other way. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Ronda, and I didn't see it that way at all. Everything that happened in TUF was Miesha and her team making sneaky wee movements, sneaky wee things here and there. That was all designed to have a go at Ronda and make Ronda react and make our team react. Now, Ronda could have took the high ground and not react, but that's just not who she is, and it was always going to turn out that way. So orchestrating a heel turn, no, but embracing it, I don't think she's bothered about it at all, and I think if she'll run with it if that's what it's going to take.
Okay, I think that pretty much covers it for today. Thanks for joining me once again, Greg.
No problem, bud.
From MMA Crypt Fighting Talk, thank you for watching.